In this video, we will be talking about and demonstrating the many properties of water. To begin, water is a molecule. Molecules are electrically neutral groups of two or more atoms held together by chemical bonds. Chemical bonds are lasting attractions between atoms, ions, and molecules. There are four major chemical bonds that we will be talking about. The first is an ionic bond, where transfers of electrons are made. One electron is lost and one electron is gained. The second type of chemical bond is a covalent bond, where electrons are shared between atoms. In a polar bond, opposite forces attract. Different forces are exerted, resulting in an uneven distribution of charge. Lastly, hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds consist of two or more polarized water molecules that form a chain. Hydrogen bonds have many specific qualities. For example, they are weak bonds. They also have high surface tension. The high attraction of water molecules in hydrogen bond allows for high surface tension. Water at or below 0 degrees Celsius becomes a solid. It occupies a definite volume, making it a solid. In a temperature above 0 degrees Celsius and up to 100 degrees Celsius, water becomes a liquid. In this state, water has no definitive shape, other than whatever the shape is of the container it's being held in. Water in a gaseous state reaches its boiling point at 100 degrees Celsius. It will boil and be released or vaporized into the air, and it is then in its gas phase. And now we have something called the octet rule. Elements gain or lose electrons to obtain a configuration nearest of the noble gas. An atom in a molecule will be stable when there are 8 electrons on its outer shell. The only exception to this rule is hydrogen. Hydrogen is stable or happy with only just 2 electrons in its outer shell. When water forms, hydrogen atoms provide the 2 or more needed electrons in oxygen. Demonstrated in the hands-on lab experiment is meniscus. The definition of a meniscus is when molecules of a liquid cling to the surface of what they're being measured in. They cling to the sides of that surface. This is more prominent in a container with a smaller radius. Liquids have cohesive properties, meaning they stick together. This is what creates surface tension. When the hydrogen bonds stick together on water's surface, it allows for denser items to float rather than sink. Liquids also have adhesive tendencies, meaning they are attracted to substances unlike themselves. Examples of this is water adhering to the sides of a glass. This forms a small curve which will be demonstrated in the following clips, as well as surface tension.
Lab experiment with several items that we think should be floating on top of the water. We have a beaker of water, and the first thing we shall do is
we shall take a smaller blueberry and place it into the container filled with water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Blueberry is floating. It didn't look like it was going to float at first, but it did come back up to the surface.
Here's another one.
This blueberry has
blueberry has come back to the surface. Should we try a larger blueberry?
Let's try a larger blueberry.
We're demonstrating
This is a bigger blueberry. Let's see.
different size blueberries. How come the other one went down? Okay.
Go out.
Okay. And this is an example of surface tension, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
In the water is a little rubber frog. Let's see what happens. Oh, Avery, it floats.
Wow. Did you think it was going to float?
No.
I am so amazed.
I mean, I thought the duckies would float. I didn't think the frog would float.
Yeah, because it's a different shape
Yes.
as a duck.
And a
not the
different
same.
reptile.
Also a different color.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. It's floating. Okay. Next
That we're gonna try
is
to see
this.
if
This rubber band has a pretty good amount of thickness to it. We do have different sizes that we will be demonstrating. Okay.
Here's one.
It sunk. Oh, okay. So this was a thinner band that actually stayed on the surface, and another smaller band that is at the surface,
Let's put a thick one.
and another thick one, which did stay at the surface as well. Tree leaf.
Leaf.
We're getting serious with our potion here. Tree leaf. Tree
It's
leaf
floating.
Floating. Paper clips. Different size paper clips.
Different shapes.
Sunk. Sunk.
And that's the end of that.
And
we have a giant paper
this
clip
giant paper
that
clip.
we think might float, but let's see.
Did not float.
Did not float.
Okay. We were not able to find a bug.
Because it's cold outside,
Yeah.
and they're all, I don't know, either dead or migrated to a warmer climate. So, sorry.
The bug is not going to be here today. No.
Maybe if this experiment was done in the spring or summer season, we could have found lots of bugs.
And we might have been able to jump into a pool, but not today.
No, I mean, we have our Halloween hats on. Come
Yeah.
on. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way. I'm sorry.
There's no way we were jumping into a pool today. Or finding the bugs.
Or jumping in the pool any time of the year. No.
We're moms. I don't wear a bathing suit.
No.
No. Nope. Haven't worn one in years.
No.
No. No. Okay. So we will try to put a toothpick. So surface tension is demonstrated. Toothpick is floating. So next we will sprinkle pepper to the water's surface. And 1 drop of dish soap to see what happens. Okay, so the pepper is moving away from the spot where the soap was. Need more? It makes the pepper sink.
Yeah.
Yeah, each spot where the dish soap goes, the pepper sinks. Makes the pepper disperse. Wow. Ready? Okay, so now we will be filling up this container of water all the way to the top. Okay, so even adding a little bit more, it should stay and not spill.
You can see there's a slight bubble at the top that the water molecules create due to being sticking to each other. So that's why they have this kind of shape on top of the water. Okay, here we have a graduated cylinder with water in it, and you can see a meniscus. If you can, well, it's not that clear, but you can see the edges of the water are a little up instead of a straight flat line that you would expect with fluid. But with water, you kind of get a concave meniscus. VIP. Let's kick it. Ice, ice, baby. Okay, so this experiment, we have water and ice in a beaker. As you can see, ice is floating on top of the water.
Which demonstrates density.
Density, which means ice is denser than the liquid phase of water. Right now, we will be demonstrating the eyeglasses and the mask combination and what happens to the eyeglasses when you have a mask on. As you can see, the eyeglasses are getting fogged up, and this will be explained in the next section as to what happens when you wear the mask with the eyeglasses and it fogs up, and what kind of properties are being displayed.
I put a spell on you. And now you're mine.
All right, now that you have watched and enjoyed our very entertaining Halloween edition of the actual hands-on lab experiment, it is my duty to explain to you the concepts and the properties behind the demonstrations. Let's start with the surface tension, which was demonstrated to you with different items of different sizes placed on top of the water to see which ones float and which ones sink. So at the surface, there are no water molecules above the very top layer to exert attractive intermolecular forces. These surface molecules become less restricted, which means that they can group together a little better. They can form stronger and tighter bonds, and they create closer spacing at the surface, therefore producing a thin film called surface tension. So one example of a surface tension in a real-world application in the human body is when the babies take their very first breath at birth. So the first breath requires an enormous effort because the airways are tiny and the lungs are collapsed. But once the lungs are inflated in full-term babies, the surfactant, which I will explain in a little bit, it is produced in the alveolar fluid, reduces the surface tension in the alveoli, and breathing becomes easier. In one of our demonstrations, we showed how ice floated on top of the water and did not sink. Now let's explain why that happens. We all know that a water molecule is made from one oxygen atom, which is negatively charged because it's electronegative, and two hydrogen atoms, which are positively charged. So this oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms are joined together with covalent bonds. water molecules are also held together with weaker chemical bonds known as hydrogen bonds. So when the water cools, the hydrogen bonds need to adjust themselves in a way to keep the negatively charged oxygens apart from each other. So when this happens, a commonly known crystal lattice is formed, which is known as ice. So the heavier water displaces the lighter ice. So ice floats on top of the water because ice is about 9% denser than liquid water. Infant respiratory distress syndrome. This is a common breathing disorder that affects mainly newborns. Most often, babies who are born before 28 weeks of pregnancy. So the IRDS is a more common in premature newborns because they are still not developed fully, and therefore they don't produce enough surfactant. Surfactant is a foamy substance. It is a special secretion produced by certain cells of the alveoli. And this substance keeps the lungs fully expanded, just so that newborns can breathe in the air once they're born. Without enough surfactant in the lungs tend to collapse, and then the newborn has to work extra hard to breathe in oxygen. And with the lack of oxygen, then there can be major issues to the other organs of the body, such as the brain and the heart, if not enough oxygen through the lungs gets to these organs. So we demonstrated an experiment with pepper flakes on top, not pepper flake, the black pepper on top of the water with dishwasher poured onto it. And we visually could see that the pepper sank. So what happened was the liquid dish soap, which acts as a surfactant, broke the surface tension of the water. That's why the pepper sank, and that's basically what happens in the lungs in the IRDS syndrome. Now I will explain to you what happened when my lab partner with a mask on wore her eyeglasses and what we observed. So what happens is when someone who wears eyeglasses wears a mask, they start to notice that the eyeglasses get foggy. So in this case, what happens is when the warm breath escapes through the top of the mask, it hits the cooler surface of the eyeglasses. And what happens is that warm air becomes liquid water particle that clings onto the eyeglasses. So these droplets then just collect there and make the vision impaired. Why does this happen? This is caused by condensation. In order to avoid that, you can simply wash the lenses with soapy water and shake off the excess water off the eyeglasses. Either let the eyeglasses air dry or gently wipe it off with soft cloth. Put it on. With a mask on, you will see that condensation will not occur. Why? Because the soap leaves behind a thin film that acts as a fog barrier. This also demonstrates a surfactant on the water as a surface tension. All right, so with our experiments, we were able to demonstrate properties such as surface tension, condensation, density, and surfactants. I hope that you enjoyed our mini lab experiment along with very educated explanations of things in the lab. And if you have any questions, let us know. If not, you can go ahead and rewatch it and enjoy again. Bye-bye.